Tonight, we're going to talk about rivers, but not the kind you can see. Not rivers with banks or bridges, or names written on maps. These rivers have no surface, no sound, no shoreline. They move silently through the deepest parts of the ocean, slower than glaciers, older than human history. Far below the waves, where sunlight fades and pressure grows heavy, vast currents slide through the dark. They carry warmth from the equator toward the poles. They return cold, dense water back toward the depths, and they never stop. This hidden system connects every ocean on Earth. It influences weather, climate, oxygen, and life itself, yet most of us will never see it. Scientists call it thermohaline circulation, but tonight you can think of it as the planet's invisible rivers. If this calm science journey helps you relax, you're welcome to subscribe to AstriX and drift with us again. As you settle in and let your breathing slow, we'll take a gentle journey through these deep, quiet currents, how they form, why they move so slowly, and how the entire Earth depends on something so calm, so patient, and so easy to overlook. There's nothing you need to remember, nothing you need to stay awake for. Just listen and let the ocean do the moving for you. Before there were maps, before ships learned to cross oceans, before humans gave names to winds, currents, and stars, the ocean was already moving, not in storms, not in waves, but in silence. Beneath the surface, far below the reach of sunlight, there is a slow, steady motion that never sleeps. It does not roar, it does not crash, it simply flows. To understand these invisible rivers, we need to begin at the surface of the sea, at a place where water meets air, where warmth and cold quietly decide the fate of the planet. Imagine standing at the edge of a calm ocean at dawn. The water looks flat, still, almost motionless, but the surface is alive with invisible exchanges. Heat from the sun warms the upper layers of the sea. Salt is left behind as water evaporates into the air. Cold winds brush across the surface, stealing warmth molecule by molecule, and water responds. Not emotionally, not suddenly, but physically. Water becomes heavier when it is cold. It becomes heavier when it is salty. And when it grows heavy enough, it sinks. This simple rule, so quiet, so basic, drives one of the most powerful systems on Earth. In certain regions of the planet, especially near the poles, the ocean loses heat to the atmosphere. Sea ice forms. But when ice freezes, it pushes salt away. That salt doesn't disappear. It sinks into the surrounding water. The result is water that is both cold and salty, dense, heavy, and eventually it begins to fall. Not like a waterfall, not like rain. It slides downwards slowly, as if the ocean itself is exhaling. This sinking water begins a journey that can last centuries. Once it leaves the surface, it enters the deep ocean, a place of darkness, pressure, and near stillness. Down here, sunlight never reaches. Temperatures remain cold and steady. Movement is slow enough that time feels stretched. And yet, the water keeps going. These deep waters begin to creep along the ocean floor, guided by underwater mountains, trenches, and continental slopes. They do not rush. They do not choose shortcuts. They follow the shape of the Earth itself. This is the beginning of what scientists call thermohaline circulation, a name that simply means movement caused by heat and salt. It is a global loop, a planetary breath, a conveyor belt of water that connects every major ocean basin, from the icy seas near Greenland to the depths of the Atlantic, around the edges of Antarctica, and slowly, patiently, into the Pacific and Indian Oceans. The journey is so slow that a single drop of water sinking today may not return to the surface for 1,000 years. Think about that. Water that fell from the surface before the Roman Empire, before written language, before the first cities, is still moving through the deep ocean today. The ocean remembers. As these invisible rivers flow, they carry more than just water. They transport heat from the equator toward colder regions, helping to regulate Earth's climate. They move oxygen into the deep sea, allowing life to exist in places that would otherwise be suffocating. They carry nutrients, slowly feeding ecosystems far from the surface. Without these currents, the ocean would stagnate. Deep waters would grow lifeless. Climate patterns would collapse into extremes. The planet would still spin, but it would feel very different. And yet, most people never think about these currents. Because they are hidden, because they don't announce themselves, because they work quietly, like background music you only notice when it stops. In the deep Atlantic, long ribbons of cold water slide southward along the ocean floor. They hug the seabed, slipping past underwater ridges and canyons. Above them, warmer waters slowly drift northward, replacing what sank long ago. This constant exchange creates balance. Not perfect balance, not permanent balance, but enough to keep Earth comfortable, habitable, alive. Farther south, near Antarctica, something similar happens on an even larger scale. Here, some of the coldest and densest water on the planet is formed. It sinks and spreads outward, filling the deepest parts of the global ocean like a slow-moving tide of cold. This Antarctic bottom water moves so quietly that instruments must wait months, sometimes years, to detect its progress. And all of this happens without sound, without light, without witnesses. If you could drift down into these depths, you wouldn't see rushing water. You wouldn't feel strong currents. You would feel almost nothing, just a subtle sense of movement, a gentle pressure, a deep, steady calm. This is why the deep ocean is often described as timeless. Change happens here, but slowly enough to feel eternal. And yet, the system is delicate. Small changes at the surface, slightly warmer air, slightly fresher water, can ripple downward over decades and centuries. When polar ice melts too quickly, it releases fresh water into the sea. Fresh water is lighter than salty water. It resists sinking. If too much fresh water spreads across the surface, the invisible rivers can weaken, slow, or even stall. Scientists have seen signs of this happening before, during past climate shifts recorded in ice cores and ocean sediments. Periods when the invisible rivers slowed and the planet responded with sudden cooling or warming. The ocean does not panic. It does not react emotionally, but it does respond. Always. As you listen now, your own body mirrors this system in quiet ways. Your breath moves air in and out. Your blood carries heat and oxygen. Your heartbeat maintains balance without you having to think about it. Like the ocean, you are full of invisible flows. And just like the ocean, rest allows those flows to settle. Tonight, there's nothing you need to do. No surface disturbances to worry about. Just let the story move slowly around you. In the next part, we'll descend even deeper, into the darkness, where pressure shapes everything, where creatures drift along these currents without ever seeing the sun, and where the slow rivers of the ocean become the quiet architects of life itself. For now, let the ocean continue its journey. It has time, so do you. As the invisible rivers leave the surface behind, they enter a world that feels almost separate from Earth. Without seasons, without sound, the deep ocean begins where light gives up. At first, sunlight fades gently, blues become darker, shadows stretch longer, colors disappear one by one, until even blue dissolves into black. By the time these waters reach the depths, here the ocean does not sparkle, it does not shimmer, it rests. Pressure grows steadily as the water sinks, not suddenly, not violently, just constantly. Every 10 meters adds weight. Every 100 meters presses harder. By the time the invisible rivers reach the deep ocean floor, the pressure is enough to crush steel, to fold solid objects as if they were thin paper, and yet life continues. The invisible rivers move through this darkness like slow breaths. They slide along the seabed, guided by mountains no one has climbed, and valleys no one has walked through. The ocean floor is not flat. It is sculpted. Ridges stretch for thousands of kilometers. Trenches plunge deeper than any canyon on land. Ancient lava flows have hardened into silent landscapes, and the water follows these shapes faithfully. It curves around obstacles. It pools in deep basins. It spills gently over underwater cliffs. Every movement is slow enough to feel deliberate. Here, Nothing rushes. Creatures that live in this realm are shaped by patience. Some drift with the currents their entire lives. They do not fight the flow. They become part of it. Tiny organisms float suspended in the dark, feeding on particles that fall from the surface like marine snow. Bits of organic matter, fragments of life, slow nourishment drifting downward. This snowfall never stops, and the invisible rivers help spread it. As water moves along the ocean floor, it carries oxygen from distant places. Not much, just enough. Enough to keep deep ecosystems alive. Without these slow currents, the deep ocean would suffocate. Oxygen would vanish. Decay would dominate. Life would retreat upward. But the invisible rivers prevent that. They refresh the depths quietly, like opening a window just enough to let fresh air in. Some creatures here glow softly. Bioluminescence flashes briefly in the dark. A calm blue spark, a gentle pulse, a silent signal. These lights are not bright. They are subtle, designed not to illuminate the world, but to communicate in it. A warning, a law, a greeting. Above them, the invisible rivers continue their journey. They do not belong to any single ocean. Water formed in the North Atlantic may one day reach the Pacific. It will pass beneath continents, slide along Antarctica, cross entire hemispheres in silence. This journey can take hundreds of years. Think about how slow that is. Cities rise and fall faster. Languages appear and vanish faster. Civilizations change faster. The invisible rivers move at the pace of geology. They carry with them the memory of the surface, a memory of cold winters, of salt pushed aside by freezing ice, of winds brushing across open seas. That memory remains encoded in temperature and salinity, like a quiet signature written into the water itself. Scientists read this signature the way historians read ancient texts. They lower instruments into the depths. They collect samples. They measure density, oxygen, chemical traces. From these subtle clues, they reconstruct the story of the ocean's movement. A story written not in words, but in gradients. As the invisible rivers flow, they eventually begin to rise again. Not suddenly, not everywhere. In some regions, deep water slowly warms. It mixes with surrounding layers. It grows lighter. And over decades or centuries, it ascends toward the surface. This rising happens far from where the water originally sank, often in the Pacific, often near the edges of continents, often in places where winds gently pull surface water away. Upwelling, scientists call it. But again, names are not important. What matters is the rhythm. Downward movement in one place, upward movement in another. A loop, a circulation, a breath. When deep water returns to the surface, it brings nutrients with it. Phosphates, nitrates, elements that fuel plankton blooms. These microscopic organisms form the base of ocean life. Fish depend on them. Larger animals depend on fish. Entire food webs rise from this quiet return. Without the invisible rivers, the surface ocean would eventually starve. Life would thin, productivity would fade, the planet would feel emptier. And still, all of this happens without drama. No crashing waves, no violent motion, just persistence. The invisible rivers do not care about speed. They care about balance, but balance is not guaranteed. As surface temperatures rise, the contrast between warm and cold water shifts. As ice melts, fresh water spreads across the surface, lightening it, making it harder to sink. Even small changes can echo downward. Not instantly, not obviously, but slowly, the way the ocean does everything. A slight weakening here, a slower sinking there. Scientists watch these changes carefully, because once altered, the system takes centuries to adjust. There are no quick fixes in the deep ocean, only long consequences. Yet despite these changes, the invisible rivers continue. They adapt, they reshape themselves, they keep moving. Because movement, however slow, is life. As you listen now, imagine drifting alongside one of these deep currents. No effort required. You are not swimming. You are being carried. The water around you is cold but steady, dark but calm. Above you, kilometers of ocean press gently downward. Below you, the seafloor stretches endlessly. There is no urgency here, No deadlines, no sharp edges, only motion without noise. For now, let the deep carry you. It knows the way. The invisible rivers do not end in the ocean. They never truly stop at the shoreline, or at the surface, or even at the edge of the water itself. Their influence rises, slowly, gently, almost unnoticed. From the depths of the sea, their effects reach the air above, the clouds overhead, and the patterns of weather that pass quietly across the land. To understand this, we need to return, just for a moment, to the surface. Not to storms or crashing waves, but to calm, open water beneath a wide sky. Here, the ocean breathes heat into the atmosphere. Warm surface waters release energy upward, softening cold air, shaping winds, guiding clouds as they form and drift. Cold waters do the opposite. They cool the air above them, making it heavier, more stable, less willing to rise. And the invisible rivers decide where these warm and cold waters appear. Because as deep water resurfaces, it carries with it the memory of its long journey. It arrives cold, often rich with nutrients, often quiet and steady. In places where deep water rises, the ocean surface cools, and when the surface cools, the sky listens. Air above cold water becomes dense, it settles, it presses downward. Clouds thin, storms weaken, rain patterns shift. Far away, in regions where warm water gathers, air grows lighter, it rises, clouds thicken, storm systems form. This is how the ocean speaks to the atmosphere, not with words, not with force, but with temperature. One of the clearest examples of this quiet conversation lies in the North Atlantic. Here, warm surface waters drift northward, carried gently by currents that originate far to the south. They release heat into the air as they go. This warmth helps keep parts of Europe milder than other regions at the same latitude. Winters are softer. Seas remain ice-free longer. Life adapts around this gentle gift of heat. But this warmth depends on what happens beneath the surface. It depends on cold, dense water sinking farther north. It depends on the invisible rivers continuing their loop. If that sinking slows, the surface warmth weakens. The change would not be immediate. It would not arrive with thunder. It would creep in quietly. Colder winters, shifting rainfall, subtle changes year by year. The invisible rivers are patient, but they are not indifferent. They respond to change with time. Farther south, the same slow dialogue plays out in different ways. In the Pacific, where much of the deep water eventually resurfaces, cold currents influence vast regions. They help shape deserts along coastlines. They limit rainfall. They create climates defined by dryness and calm. Places where the ocean cools the air just enough to prevent clouds from forming. All because deep water, after centuries below, has returned. And above the sea, life responds. Fish migrate along temperature boundaries. Plankton bloom when nutrients rise. Birds follow the food. Even humans, often without realizing it, build cities and cultures around these patterns. Ports, farms, trade routes, all quietly shaped by currents no one can see. The invisible rivers also influence something even larger. The planet's long-term balance of carbon. As surface waters cool and sink, they carry dissolved carbon dioxide with them. This carbon is locked away in the deep ocean, sometimes for hundreds or thousands of years. It is removed from the atmosphere, stored quietly below. When deep waters eventually rise again, some of that carbon returns, but slowly, gradually. This slow exchange acts like a planetary buffer, softening sudden changes. Without it, the atmosphere would swing more wildly between extremes. The ocean, through its invisible rivers, helps steady the planet's breath. But nothing about this system is rigid. The invisible rivers do not follow fixed paths carved in stone. They adjust as winds shift, as temperatures change, as ice advances or retreats. The currents bend, they slow, they strengthen, always seeking balance. Sometimes this balance tips. In Earth's distant past, there were moments when these rivers weakened significantly. evidence lies frozen in ice cores, recorded in layers of sediment, written quietly in the chemistry of ancient shells. During those times, climates shifted abruptly. Regions cooled rapidly. Rainfall patterns changed, not because the ocean became violent, but because it became slightly different. The lesson is subtle. Power does not always arrive loudly. Often, it arrives slowly and stays. As you listen now, notice how your own environment feels, the air around you, its temperature, its stillness or movement. All of it exists within systems just as patient as the ocean. Your body exchanges heat with the room. Your breath shifts the air ever so slightly. Your presence alters the space without effort. You do not need to force balance. It happens naturally. The invisible rivers work the same way. They do not strive. They do not rush. They persist. Even now, as you rest, water formed near polar ice long ago is gliding silently beneath the waves. It is shaping the world you live in, even if you never think about it again. And perhaps that is their greatest strength. They do their work without asking for attention. Life in the ocean does not fight the invisible rivers. It learns them, from the smallest drifting organisms to the largest creatures ever to live. Life is adapted to motion that cannot be seen, only felt. In the deep ocean, movement is not something you swim against. It is something you accept. Many creatures here are not strong swimmers. They do not need to be. They float, they glide, they surrender to the slow pull of water around them. Plankton, tiny delicate forms of life, spend their entire existence drifting. They rise and fall gently with the currents, feeding where nutrients appear, reproducing where conditions are just right. Their lives are short, but their influence is vast. Plankton form the foundation of ocean life. They capture energy from light. They transform invisible nutrients into living matter. And the invisible rivers decide where they gather. Where deep water rises, plankton bloom. Where currents converge, life concentrates. Fish arrive next. Schools follow temperature gradients, those invisible borders between warm and cold water. They move not by memory, but by sensation. A slight change in temperature, a subtle shift in salinity, a quiet signal that food lies ahead. Predators follow the fish. Larger animals follow the predators. And so, entire ecosystems stretch along paths shaped by currents no one can see. Even the great whales, creatures of immense size and presence, are guided by these slow rivers. They migrate across oceans, following ancient routes traced not on maps, but in water. Routes where food appears season after season. Routes where the ocean quietly promises abundance. A whale does not need to understand thermohaline circulation. It only needs to feel where life gathers, and it always knows. In the deep sea, life adapts in quieter ways. Here, food is scarce. Energy arrives slowly, falling from above like distant snow. Creatures conserve everything. Movements are minimal. Growth is slow. Lifespans are long. Some deep-sea animals live for centuries. They age so slowly that time barely touches them. The invisible rivers help make this possible. By carrying oxygen and nutrients into the depths, they allow life to persist where it otherwise could not. Not abundantly, not extravagantly, but steadily. Evolution in this environment favors patience. Bright colors fade away. Hard shells soften. Eyes shrink or vanish entirely. Instead, senses are tuned to pressure, vibration, and chemistry. Life learns to feel the flow. Some creatures position themselves carefully, using the gentle movement of water to deliver food directly to them. Others time their reproduction with shifts in current direction, ensuring their offspring drift towards safer regions. Nothing is wasted. Nothing is rushed. Over millions of years, these adaptations accumulate quietly. Life does not conquer the ocean, it negotiates with it. Even life on land carries the imprint of these invisible rivers. The oxygen you breathe today was once released by tiny marine organisms, fed by nutrients delivered from the deep. The climate that shaped forests, grasslands, and deserts was moderated by heat carried across oceans. The rhythms of ice ages and warm periods were softened or intensified by changes in circulation. In this way, the invisible rivers reach far beyond the sea. They help determine where rain falls, where rivers flow, where life thrives. They do not act alone, but they are always present, always contributing. Human history, too, has been shaped by these quiet flows. Coastal regions with rich fisheries became centers of settlement. Trade routes followed predictable currents. Sailing cultures learned to read the sea not just by stars, but by the behavior of water itself. Long before science named these processes, people felt them. They noticed where fog formed, where storms weakened, where the sea seemed generous or empty. All clues written by invisible rivers. Even now, modern instruments confirm what intuition once sensed. Satellites observe subtle temperature differences at the surface. Sensors drift through the depths, silently recording the ocean's slow pulse. Each measurement is a whisper from the deep. Together, they tell a story of connection, a reminder that no part of the planet exists in isolation. As you listen, consider how your own life is shaped by currents you do not see. Habits, routines, patterns of thought. Some are fast and obvious. Others move slowly beneath awareness. They guide choices. They shape days. They influence rest. Like the ocean, balance does not come from stopping movement. It comes from allowing it to flow naturally. The invisible rivers do not force direction. They respond to conditions. When things grow too warm, they redistribute heat. When areas grow depleted, they bring renewal. They are not perfect, but they are resilient, and life has learned to trust them. There are systems on Earth that respond quickly. A storm can form in hours, a river can flood in days, a forest can burn in a season, and then there are systems like the invisible rivers. They do not hurry. They do not react on human timescales. They move in decades, centuries, and longer still. To study something this slow requires a different kind of attention. Scientists cannot watch a full cycle unfold in a lifetime. They must piece the story together from fragments, from clues, from patience. They lower instruments into the ocean that drift freely for years. These devices sink. They rise. They record temperature and salinity in silence. Some wash ashore long after they were released. Some vanish forever into the deep. Others transmit their data quietly to satellites, sending whispers of information from beneath the waves. Together, these measurements form a picture, not sharp, not complete, but slowly becoming clearer. Ice cores drilled from Greenland and Antarctica hold another part of the story. Each layer of ice traps tiny bubbles of ancient air, a record of temperature, a memory of climate. By reading these layers, scientists learn when the invisible rivers slowed and when they strengthened. They see moments when cold water stopped sinking as it once did, moments when fresh water flooded the surface, moments when balance shifted. The planet responded every time, not with chaos, but with change. Temperatures drifted, rainfall patterns rearranged themselves, ecosystems adapted or disappeared. These past events matter because they remind us of something essential. The invisible rivers are stable, but not permanent. They rely on contrasts. Cold must be cold enough to sink. Salt must be concentrated enough to add weight. Ice must form slowly enough to maintain density. When these conditions change, the currents respond. Today, scientists watch carefully as polar regions warm faster than the rest of the planet. Ice melts earlier each year. Fresh water spreads across the ocean surface. Salinity shifts, subtly but measurably. No alarms sound beneath the sea. No sudden breaks appear. Instead, there is a quiet question forming. How much change can this system absorb before it begins to move differently? Not stop, not collapse, but change. Some models suggest slowing in certain regions. Others show shifts in where water sinks or rises. None of these changes happen overnight. They unfold like a long sentence being rewritten, one word at a time. This is why the invisible rivers are difficult to communicate. They do not fit neatly into headlines. They resist urgency. And yet, they influence everything. Agriculture depends on stable climate patterns. Water supplies depend on predictable rainfall. Coastal communities depend on fisheries shaped by currents. Even small shifts spread over decades can reshape lives. Understanding this requires a different kind of thinking. Not reaction, but anticipation. Not panic, but awareness. The ocean teaches this lesson quietly. It shows that strength does not always come from speed. Sometimes it comes from continuity. As you rest now, notice how your own body prefers gradual change. Breathing slows naturally when you relax. Muscles release tension in stages, not all at once. Sleep arrives when systems align, not when forced. The invisible rivers follow the same principle. They align conditions. They redistribute imbalance. They respond not instantly, but reliably. And even if their paths shift, they continue to move. There is comfort in that. The future ocean will not be empty. It will not be still. It will be different. Different currents, different patterns, different balances. Life will respond, as it always has, by adapting. Some species will move. Some will change. Some will fade. Others will appear. This is not a story of endings. It is a story of transformation. One that unfolds slowly enough that it can feel invisible, until suddenly it is everywhere. By studying the invisible rivers, humans are learning how to listen to long processes, how to think beyond immediate outcomes, how to respect systems that operate far outside daily experience. This may be one of the most valuable lessons the ocean offers, that not everything important announces itself, that some forces shape the world quietly and ask only for patience in return. As this part comes to a close, the invisible rivers continue their journey. They sink, they flow, they rise, unbothered by clocks, unaffected by borders. Humans measure time in small pieces, seconds ticking, minutes passing, hours filling and emptying. Calendars flip, years accumulate. A sense of urgency quietly follows us everywhere. But the ocean does not measure time this way. The invisible rivers move according to a different clock, one without numbers, one without deadlines. Their time is measured in distance traveled slowly, in temperature changing by fractions of a degree, in salt accumulating molecule by molecule. For the ocean, time is not something that passes. It is something that unfolds. A drop of water sinking near the poles does not know how long it will remain below. There is no expectation, no schedule. It simply responds to its surroundings. Cold makes it heavy. Salt makes it sink. Pressure guides it forward. Years slide into decades. Decades stretch into centuries. And still the water moves. This is how the ocean remembers. Not with stories, not with images, but with layers. Each layer of water carries a history written into its chemistry, a faint imprint of the surface conditions it once touched. Scientists call this memory traces, isotopes, dissolved gases, subtle chemical fingerprints. These traces drift along with the currents, aging quietly as time passes. By reading them, scientists can tell how long a parcel of water has been traveling, where it originated, how long it has been isolated from the surface. Some deep waters have been separated from the atmosphere for over 1,000 years. Imagine that, water that last felt sunlight before the modern world existed, before electricity, before industry, before cities as we know them. It has been moving ever since. The ocean does not forget quickly. And because it remembers so much, it changes slowly. This slowness is not a weakness. It is a form of stability. When conditions fluctuate at the surface, a warm year, a cold winter, a passing storm, the deep ocean absorbs these changes gently. It smooths sharp edges. It dampens extremes. Like a vast thermal reservoir, it keeps the planet from swinging too far, too fast. But this buffering takes time to adjust. When changes persist for decades, they begin to sink deeper, not suddenly, but inevitably. This is why the invisible rivers matter so deeply. They are the bridge between short-term change and long-term response. They connect moments to errors. In the deep ocean, nothing happens all at once. Even disruptions unfold slowly. A weakening current does not announce itself. It reveals itself through patterns, slightly cooler regions, subtle shifts in oxygen levels, gradual rearrangements of ecosystems. These changes are easy to miss if you expect speed, but unmistakable if you learn to look patiently. The ocean teaches a kind of attention that humans are not often encouraged to practice, the kind that waits, the kind that listens over long periods, the kind that accepts that understanding may take longer than a single lifetime. As you rest now, you may notice that your own sense of time is beginning to soften. Thoughts slow, breathing deepens, minutes feel less defined. This is not accidental. Your body, like the ocean, responds well to reduced urgency. Sleep itself is a surrender to a different clock. During sleep, time stretches, moments blend together, the sharp edges of the day dissolve. In this state, the mind becomes more like the deep ocean, processing slowly, integrating quietly, restoring balance. The invisible rivers follow a similar rhythm. They do not optimize for speed. They optimize for continuity. Their goal is not efficiency, but endurance. And because of that, they have lasted through ice ages, through continental shifts, through the rise and fall of entire ecosystems. They have adapted again and again without ever rushing. This long view challenges how humans often think about change. We are accustomed to immediate results, clear feedback, visible progress. The ocean offers something else. It offers delayed outcomes. Actions taken today may not fully express themselves for generations. Carbon absorbed now may remain stored in deep water long after current concerns fade. Heat redistributed today may influence climate centuries from now. This does not make responsibility smaller, it makes it larger, because time stretches consequences outward. But the ocean does not frame this as a burden, it frames it as continuity. Everything is connected across time, whether we notice it or not, and nothing is ever completely isolated. Even the deepest waters, after centuries of darkness, will one day return to the surface. They will feel sunlight again. They will exchange gases with the air. They will rejoin the visible world. This return is not dramatic, it is gentle. And when it happens, the water carries the past with it. Nutrients accumulated over centuries, chemical signatures of long journeys, the quiet record of time spent below. Life responds immediately. Plankton bloom, food webs awaken, energy flows. What was hidden becomes productive. The deep gives back to the surface. This cycle, descent, isolation, return, is the ocean's way of renewing itself, not by erasing the past, but by integrating it. As you listen, consider how rest works in your own life. When you pause, when you sleep, when you step away from constant stimulation, you are not stopping time. You are allowing deeper processes to unfold. Memory consolidates, emotions settle, energy redistributes. Like the ocean, you recover not by rushing forward, but by moving inward for a while. The invisible rivers remind us that not all movement needs to be seen. Some of the most important work happens below the surface, out of sight, out of awareness, and when it re-emerges, it does so quietly, having done exactly what was needed. It is easy to forget how slow the world truly is. From the surface, everything appears to move quickly. Days pass, seasons change, news arrives in waves. But beneath all of this activity, the planet moves at a different pace. A deeper pace. Mountains rise millimeter by millimeter. Continents drift no faster than fingernails grow. And the invisible rivers of the ocean glide through darkness, measuring their progress in centuries. To live on Earth is to live within these slow forces, whether we notice them or not. The ground beneath your feet carries the memory of ancient seas. The air around you is circulated through countless lungs, human and non-human, over unfathomable time. Nothing exists only in the present moment. Everything is layered. The invisible rivers remind us of this layering. They show that what happens now is always influenced by what came before and will shape what comes after. This awareness can feel unsettling at first. It stretches responsibility across time. It softens the idea of control, but it also offers a rare kind of comfort because slow systems are resilient. They absorb disturbance, they redistribute imbalance, they persist beyond any single event. The ocean has endured asteroid impacts, ice ages, mass extinctions. Through it all, water kept moving, not fast enough to stop change, but steady enough to carry life forward. As humans, we are part of this continuity. Our bodies are mostly water. Our temperature is regulated by circulation. Our survival depends on climates shaped by the sea. The invisible rivers flow through us indirectly. They influence the food we eat, the weather we experience, the ecosystems we rely on. Even when we are unaware, we are participants. Understanding this participation does not require expertise, it requires attention. Attention to patterns rather than events, to trends rather than moments, to quiet signals rather than loud ones. The ocean does not shout when it changes, it whispers, and those whispers are easiest to hear when we slow down. There is a reason ocean imagery often feels calming. The steady horizon, the rhythmic movement, the sense of depth beyond sight. These qualities resonate with something ancient in us. Our nervous systems evolved alongside water. Our sense of safety is deeply tied to predictable rhythms. The invisible rivers offer exactly that. A reminder that beneath uncertainty, there is structure. Not rigid structure, flexible structure, a system that bends without breaking. This does not mean everything will remain the same. Change is constant, but the way change unfolds matters. Fast changes feel threatening. Slow changes allow adaptation. The ocean specializes in slow change, and by observing it, we learn how adaptation can happen without panic. When currents shift, life responds, not immediately, not without cost, but with creativity. New migration routes form. Different species thrive. Ecosystems reorganize. Loss and emergence coexist. This is not a story of perfection. It is a story of persistence. As you listen now, you may notice that your thoughts have softened. That urgency has faded slightly. This is not accidental. Your mind is responding to the same principle. When input slows, processing deepens. When pressure eases, balance returns. The invisible rivers are teaching without instruction. They show that influence does not require force. That guidance can be subtle. That presence can be quiet. In a world that often values speed, this lesson is easy to overlook, but it remains true. Some of the most important shifts happen too slowly to trend, too quietly to announce themselves. They unfold in the background, shaping the conditions in which everything else occurs. The ocean does not compete with the atmosphere, it collaborates. It does not dominate the land. It supports it. It does not erase the past. It carries it forward. Living on a planet of slow forces means accepting that not everything is immediate. It means trusting processes we cannot fully see. It means allowing time to be an ally rather than an enemy. This does not require passivity. It requires alignment. Acting in ways that respect long timelines. Making choices that acknowledge delayed effects. Cultivating patience, where impatience feels tempting. The invisible rivers do not resist change. They integrate it. And that integration is what allows continuity. By now, the invisible rivers may no longer feel distant. They may feel familiar, not as something you must understand, but as something you can sense. Slow movement beneath awareness. Quiet balance unfolding without effort. This is what it means to live inside a moving world. Motion does not always announce itself. Change does not always ask for attention. Sometimes, the most powerful systems operate in silence. The ocean has been teaching this lesson for as long as there has been water on Earth. While waves rise and fall at the surface, while storms pass overhead, the deep currents continue, steady, uninterrupted, patient. They do not respond to every disturbance. They absorb, redistribute, and carry on. This does not mean the surface is unimportant. It means the surface is supported. Everything visible rests on something invisible. The climate you experience each day is held in place by slow exchanges of heat and salt. The life you encounter, from forests to fields to fisheries, is shaped by nutrients carried upward from the depths. Even moments of calm in your own life are often supported by processes you do not notice. Digestion, circulation, healing, all slow, all continuous. The invisible rivers mirror this inner architecture. They show us that rest is not the absence of movement. It is the right kind of movement. In deep water, nothing is forced. Water moves because conditions allow it to move, because density shifts, because gravity guides. There is no struggle, just response. As you lie here listening, your body is doing something similar. Breathing adjusts automatically. Muscles soften when they are ready. The nervous system shifts toward restoration. You are not making this happen. You are allowing it. The ocean understands allowance. When surface waters grow too warm, heat is carried away. When depths grow depleted, nutrients return. Balance is not a fixed state. It is a continuous process. This is why the invisible rivers never stop. Stopping would mean stagnation. Stagnation would mean loss. Movement, even slow movement, is essential. But it does not need to be intense. It only needs to be consistent. There is a quiet reassurance in knowing that the world does not depend on constant urgency. That stability can come from patience, that systems can endure without shouting. In a way, the invisible rivers are practicing trust. They trust physics. They trust gravity. They trust time. They do not attempt to control outcomes. They allow outcomes to emerge. This trust has carried the ocean through immense change. Ice has advanced and retreated. Sea levels have risen and fallen. Species have come and gone. Through it all, the currents adapted. They bent. They redirected. They persisted. Nothing about this process is perfect, but perfection is not required for continuity. Only resilience. As you rest now, you may notice that your thoughts are less sharp. Edges soften. Narratives loosen. This is not losing focus. It is entering a deeper kind of awareness. One that does not demand constant interpretation. One that allows experience to flow without commentary. The invisible rivers exist in this state. They do not analyze their movement. They do not label their path. They simply move. And because of that, they shape everything. From the smallest plankton to the largest climate patterns. From the deepest trenches to the air you breathe. Nothing is outside their influence, and yet they remain unseen. This invisibility is not a flaw. It is a reminder that not everything important seeks attention, that some systems do their best work when they are left undisturbed, when they are trusted to function without constant interference. This does not mean ignorance, it means respect. Understanding the invisible rivers allows us to interact with the planet more gently, to make choices that consider long timelines, to value steadiness over speed, to rest without guilt, because rest is not withdrawal. It is participation in a slower rhythm. The ocean rests by moving slowly, by conserving energy, by letting gravity do the work. You can do the same. There is no need to force sleep, no need to chase calm. Like deep water rising eventually to the surface, rest will come when conditions align. All you need to do is remain still enough to feel it. As Part 8 settles, the invisible rivers continue their journey. They are not finished. They are never finished. They are simply in motion. The ocean does not ask to be understood. It does not explain itself. It does not summarize its intentions. It simply continues. Water sinks where it grows heavy. It rises where it becomes light. And in between, it drifts, patient, unbothered, precise. Far below the surface, the invisible rivers are still moving. They trace paths shaped by the planet itself, guided by gravity, temperature, and salt. They slide past underwater mountains and settle briefly in deep basins, lingering just long enough to absorb stillness. Before continuing on, nothing urges them forward. They move because movement is natural. Above them, life unfolds at a different pace. Days come and go. Weather shifts. Light changes. And yet, All of this rests on the slow foundation beneath. The ocean floor feels distant, but it is always present. It supports not only water, but time. In these depths, time does not feel linear. It does not feel divided into before and after. It feels continuous. A drop of water that left the surface centuries ago has never stopped being part of the ocean. It has never left the system. It has only traveled through different states of darkness and pressure. In the same way, nothing in your experience truly disappears. Moments pass, but their influence lingers. Thoughts fade, but their shape remains. Rest does not erase the day, it integrates it. The invisible rivers understand integration. They do not isolate heat, nutrients, or gases. They redistribute them. When something accumulates too much in one place, it is carried elsewhere. When something becomes scarce, it is replenished slowly. This is how balance survives change. Not by holding everything still, but by allowing movement to soften extremes. This principle is written everywhere in the natural world. Forests cycle nutrients through decay and growth. Rivers reshape land without ever stopping. Even stars evolve by redistributing energy over immense time. The ocean's deep currents belong to this family of processes. They are not unique, they are essential, and they operate without awareness of being watched. There is a freedom in that, a sense that not everything depends on attention or intention. Some things simply work. As you rest now, your body is engaging in similar work. Tissues repair themselves. Memories reorganize quietly. Energy shifts where it is needed. None of this requires conscious effort. It happens because the conditions allow it. Stillness invites it. The ocean does not hurry rest. It waits for alignment. When water cools enough, it sinks. When it warms enough, it rises. When conditions are right, change happens. When they are not, nothing is forced. This patience is not passive, it is deeply responsive. The invisible rivers are always listening. To temperature, to salinity, to pressure. They adjust their flow accordingly. In doing so, they maintain continuity. Continuity is not sameness. It is connection across difference. The ocean today is not the ocean of the distant past, and it will not be the ocean of the distant future, but it will remain an ocean, because its processes allow transformation without collapse. This is a quiet reassurance. Change does not have to mean loss. It can mean reorganization. The invisible rivers show how reorganization can happen gradually, with minimal disruption. They do not demand that everything stay as it was. They allow everything to become what it needs to be next. This lesson is easy to miss in a world focused on immediacy, but it is always available, waiting beneath the surface. As awareness softens, the mind can begin to mirror this slow adaptability. Thoughts no longer need to be resolved. Questions do not need answers. They can drift, like water moving through the deep. They can pass through awareness without resistance. This is not emptiness, it is spaciousness, a state where experience flows rather than accumulates. The invisible rivers do not cling to any single place they pass through. They are shaped by the earth, but not confined by it. In this way, they are both grounded and free. They belong everywhere, yet nowhere in particular. Rest works the same way. It does not demand ownership. It does not insist on control. It arrives when conditions allow it. As you lie here, the world continues its slow work. Water circulates through the ocean basins. Heat drifts between hemispheres. Life responds. And you are included in this motion, not as an observer, but as a participant. Your breath connects you to the atmosphere. Your body connects you to gravity. Your warmth connects you to the planet's energy balance. Nothing separates you from these systems. You are part of them, whether you think about them or not. This belonging does not require effort. It is given. The invisible rivers do not question their place in the world. They do not seek meaning. They move because movement is what sustains them. And in doing so, they sustain everything else. As the mind grows quieter, this realization can settle gently. There is nothing you need to fix, nothing you need to optimize. Balance is already happening, not perfectly, not instantly, but continuously. The planet has been practicing this balance for billions of years, long before names existed, long before stories were told. It will continue long after individual moments pass. This does not make any moment less valuable. It makes each one part of a larger continuity, a continuity that does not rush. As sleep approaches or as rest deepens, the invisible rivers continue their silent journey. They do not pause when attention fades. They do not stop when consciousness shifts. They move on, carrying heat, carrying memory, carrying life. And just as they do, you can allow yourself to drift. There is no destination you need to reach. The current is already steady, and it will carry you exactly as far as you need to go. Where light has long since faded and sound feels absorbed by distance, the ocean continues its quiet motion, not as a force to be noticed, but as a presence that simply remains, steady and unopposed, carrying warmth away from places that have too much and returning nourishment to places that have waited patiently, never asking how long the wait would be. Nothing down there is in a hurry. Water does not wonder when it will arrive, because arrival is not the point. Movement itself is enough, a slow agreement between gravity and density, between temperature and depth, between what sinks and what eventually rises again, forming a loop so vast that it can hold centuries inside a single cycle. If you could follow one thread of this movement, just one narrow ribbon of deep current, you would notice that it does not cut sharply through the ocean, but curves gently, adjusting its path to the shape of the earth, yielding to ridges and trenches, responding to the quiet contours of the planet rather than resisting them. And in that yielding, it finds its way forward. This is how persistence works here. Not through force, not through speed, but through alignment. The water does not fight the ocean floor. It listens to it. It does not demand space. It occupies what is available. And because of this, it endures. Above, the surface world changes constantly. Clouds forming and dissolving, winds shifting direction, temperatures rising and falling with the turning of the planet. Yet none of this disturbs the deeper rhythm, because the deep is not disconnected from urgency. Urgency belongs to the surface. Depth belongs to continuity. And as the invisible rivers continue their motion, they quietly absorb the excesses of the surface world, taking in heat, storing carbon, redistributing imbalance so that no single moment becomes too extreme, too sharp, too disruptive. This is not perfection. It is moderation, a softening of edges, a willingness to hold things longer before releasing them. In this way, the ocean acts as a memory, not a memory of events, but a memory of conditions, remembering what the world felt like and carrying that feeling forward, diluted, transformed, made less abrupt, until it can be reintroduced gently when the time is right. Time, here, is not counted. It is sensed. It is felt in the gradual cooling of water, in the slow accumulation of salt, in the barely perceptible shift of density that signals readiness to sink. And when that moment arrives, nothing dramatic happens. The water simply lets go of the surface and begins its descent, sliding downward as naturally as a thought fading when it no longer needs attention. As you rest now, your body understands this motion intuitively. There are processes unfolding inside you that do not require supervision. Systems that have learned through repetition how to restore balance when given enough stillness, enough quiet, enough space to operate without interference, and like the ocean, they do their best work when they are not rushed. Muscles release tension gradually, not all at once. Breath deepens not because it is commanded to, but because resistance softens. Thoughts loosen their grip, not because they are solved, but because they are allowed to drift past without being held. This is the same intelligence that guides the deep currents. An intelligence rooted in physics, yes, but also in patience. The invisible rivers do not correct themselves instantly when conditions change. They adjust slowly, testing new pathways, redistributing flow, finding a new equilibrium without ever fully stopping, because stopping would mean stagnation, and stagnation is the only true disruption. Movement, even slow movement, is life. And so the water continues, century after century, looping through the global ocean, touching every basin, influencing every climate zone, shaping ecosystems that never see it directly, yet depend on it entirely. And in this way, the unseen becomes indispensable. It is easy to overlook what does not announce itself. It is easy to focus on waves instead of currents, on storms instead of circulation, on moments instead of processes. But the ocean does not reward attention to moments alone. It rewards awareness of patterns, patterns that repeat gently, patterns that change gradually, patterns that reveal themselves only when observed over long stretches of time. The invisible rivers are such a pattern. They remind us that stability is not stillness, and that rest does not mean absence of motion, but the presence of a rhythm that is sustainable, one that can continue without exhaustion, without collapse, without urgency. As this rhythm continues beneath the sea, it offers a quiet invitation, an invitation to slow perception, to release the need to track progress, to trust that movement does not need to be visible to be effective. You do not need to know where the current is going to let it carry you. You do not need to define the outcome to allow rest to deepen. Like water responding to gravity, like warmth dispersing into cooler regions, your system knows how to settle when given the chance. There is no deadline for this settling, no finish line, only a gradual easing into balance. The ocean does not celebrate when a cycle completes. It simply continues into the next one, and that continuation is enough. As awareness drifts, as listening becomes less active and more receptive, the invisible rivers remain exactly as they are, moving slowly through darkness, shaping the planet without ever seeking recognition, and in that quiet persistence, they offer a final reassurance. Nothing essential is fragile. What truly sustains the world has learned how to bend, how to wait, how to move without noise. And, as you rest within this understanding, there is nothing left to do, nothing left to resolve, nothing left to anticipate. The current is steady, the depth is patient, and you are allowed to drift. The deeper the ocean moves, the less it asks of the world above it, and there is something quietly reassuring in that relationship, because it shows that not everything needs constant attention in order to remain essential. That some of the most important forces shaping existence are content to work in silence, unobserved, steady in their purpose, without ever needing to justify their presence. Far below the surface, where pressure smooths sharp edges and darkness softens distance, the invisible rivers continue their slow passage, not because they are driven, but because they are allowed, responding only to the simplest truths of matter, to weight and temperature, to balance seeking itself without instruction. In this place, nothing competes. Water does not rush to arrive first. It does not measure success by speed. It moves because moving keeps the system alive, and it pauses only where the shape of the planet invites it to pause, gathering stillness briefly before continuing on, carrying with it the quiet history of every place it has been. This history is not loud. It does not announce itself as memory. It exists as subtle differences, as faint traces of chemistry, as temperatures altered by fractions of a degree, and yet these tiny variations are enough to influence entire ecosystems, enough to decide where life flourishes and where it retreats, enough to shape climates that define how the surface world feels to those who live upon it. The invisible rivers do not impose order. They offer coherence. They connect distant places without collapsing them into sameness, allowing diversity to exist within a shared rhythm, allowing cold depths and warm surfaces to remain different while still belonging to the same circulating whole. This circulation is not symmetrical. Some paths take longer, some waters linger, some roots deepen while others thin. But imbalance does not mean failure here, it means adjustment. The ocean is not trying to achieve a final state, it is maintaining continuity through change. This distinction matters, because continuity does not resist transformation, it absorbs it. And in doing so, it ensures that nothing becomes overwhelming. As you rest now, this principle may feel familiar. Perhaps you notice that when you stop trying to control your thoughts, they reorganize themselves naturally, drifting into patterns that feel less sharp, less demanding, less insistent on resolution. Perhaps you notice that stillness does not create emptiness, but space. And within that space, things settle into places that feel more balanced than before. The invisible rivers move through the ocean in exactly this way. They do not resolve tension by force. They redistribute it until it softens. They do not eliminate difference. They allow difference to coexist within flow. This is why the deep ocean rarely experiences extremes. Temperatures remain stable. Conditions remain consistent. Life adapts to constancy, evolving slowly, patiently, in alignment with an environment that does not surprise it. Surprise belongs to the surface. Depth belongs to endurance. And endurance is built not from rigidity, but from flexibility practiced over long spans of time. The invisible rivers have practiced this flexibility for millions of years. They have shifted paths as continents moved. They have adjusted strength as ice advanced and retreated. They have persisted through changes far greater than anything experienced in recent history, not because they resisted those changes, but because they incorporated them gradually. There is a quiet wisdom in that approach, one that does not demand that everything remain familiar. Only that movement continues. Only that connection is preserved. Only that balance is allowed to re-emerge, even if it takes time. As awareness softens further, it becomes easier to sense that rest is not a break from motion, but a change in how motion is experienced. Less sharp, less insistent, more spacious. The ocean does not stop moving at night. It simply moves without being noticed. And in that invisibility, it does its most reliable work. The same is true of sleep. When consciousness loosens its grip, deeper processes take over, integrating experiences, restoring systems, redistributing energy without commentary, without urgency, without need for oversight. This is not absence, it is presence at a deeper level. The invisible rivers remind us that presence does not require awareness to be effective. Some of the most important acts of maintenance happen outside of attention. They happen because the conditions are right, because the system is allowed to function as it was designed to function. Nothing in the deep ocean is improvising. Everything is responding. And response here is enough. The planet does not ask the ocean to explain itself. It simply allows it to move. In return, the ocean moderates climate, sustains life, and carries memory across generations, ensuring that no moment exists in isolation, that no change happens without context, that no imbalance remains entirely unresolved. As this understanding settles, there may be a sense of being held not by something active or intentional, but by something consistent, something that does not waver when attention fades, something that continues whether or not it is acknowledged. This is the quiet support of slow systems. They do not require belief. They do not require focus. They simply remain. The invisible rivers will continue long after listening ends. They will continue as awareness drifts. They will continue as sleep deepens. They will continue through moments of waking and forgetting alike, and that continuity is not separate from you. It is mirrored in your own biology, in your own rhythms, in the way your body knows how to recover when given time, in the way your mind reorganizes itself when not pressed for answers. There is no finish point here, only gradual settling, only softening, only the slow return of balance. As the world above the surface quiets, and the deep continues its steady circulation, there is nothing left to follow, nothing left to understand, nothing left to prepare. The current is already moving, the system is already holding, and whatever comes next will arise naturally, in its own time, exactly as it should. Eventually, even movement begins to feel like stillness. Not because anything has stopped, but because the rhythm has become so familiar, so steady, that it no longer asks to be followed. The invisible rivers continue beneath the ocean's surface, gliding through darkness with the same patience they have always known. Unconcerned with endings, unconcerned with beginnings, existing only in the present motion of balance, finding itself again and again. There is nothing left for them to explain. They have already done their work. Water continues to sink where it grows heavy, and rise where it becomes light, guided by simple truths that do not change with opinion or attention. Heat drifts away from excess, nutrients return to places that have waited, and the deep holds everything gently, without judgment, without urgency, without asking whether it is being noticed. This is how the ocean rests. Not by stopping, but by trusting its own design. And now, that same trust can extend to you. You do not need to follow every thought to its conclusion. You do not need to remember every word. You do not need to stay present. Like deep water moving far below the surface, your awareness is free to drift without direction, free to soften without explanation, free to fade into rest knowing that nothing essential is being lost. The world will continue its quiet work without your supervision. The ocean will continue to circulate heat and memory. The planet will continue to breathe through water and air. Life will continue to adapt, respond, and persist. And you're allowed to let go of holding it all together. There is a deep kindness in systems that do not depend on constant attention, a reassurance in knowing that balance is not fragile, that it does not collapse the moment focus shifts elsewhere. The invisible rivers are proof of this. They carry stability across centuries without ever asking to be watched. They do not care if the surface is calm or chaotic. They do not hurry when conditions change. They do not cling to how things used to be. They adjust slowly, patiently, allowing the new shape of the world to emerge in its own time. This is not weakness, it is wisdom, and it is the same wisdom your body follows as sleep approaches. Breathing becomes quieter, not because it is controlled, but because it is allowed. Muscles release, not because they are commanded, but because the need to hold dissolves. Thoughts loosen their edges and drift, not because they are resolved, but because they no longer need to stay sharp. Nothing needs to be finished. Nothing needs to be achieved. Rest is not a reward for effort. It is a natural state that returns when resistance fades. The ocean understands this deeply. After centuries in darkness, deep water will eventually rise again, carrying with it everything it gathered along the way. And when it does not announce its return. It simply becomes part of the surface world once more, nourishing life quietly, invisibly, completely. In the same way, rest does not erase what came before, it integrates it. The day settles into the night, experience settles into memory, tension settles into release. There is no separation between movement and rest here, only a change in depth. As awareness continues to soften, you may feel as though you are sinking gently, not downward in space, but inward into stillness, where effort is no longer required and attention is no longer sharp. This is not falling, it is settling, and settling is safe. The invisible rivers have been settling for millions of years, finding paths that support life rather than disrupt it, choosing continuity over speed, choosing balance over control. They remind us that the world does not depend on constant striving to remain whole, it depends on rhythm. And rhythm does not need supervision. Now, there is nothing left to listen for. The ocean continues whether you hear it or not. The currents continue whether you follow them or not. The balance continues whether you think about it or not. You are free to drift, free to rest, free to disappear into the same gentle process that carries the planet itself. The current is steady, the depth is patient, and you are already held. Nothing more is required. Eventually, even movement begins to feel like stillness, not because anything has stopped, but because the rhythm has become so familiar, so steady, that it no longer asks to be followed. The invisible rivers continue beneath the ocean's surface, gliding through darkness with the same patience they have always known, unconcerned with endings, unconcerned with beginnings, existing only in the present motion of balance, finding itself again and again. There is nothing left for them to explain. They have already done their work. Water continues to sink where it grows heavy and rise where it becomes light, guided by simple truths that do not change with opinion or attention. Heat drifts away from excess, nutrients return to places that have waited, and the deep holds everything gently, without judgment, without urgency, without asking whether it is being noticed. This is how the ocean rests, not by stopping, but by trusting its own design. And now, that same trust can extend to you. You do not need to follow every thought to its conclusion. You do not need to remember every word. You do not need to stay present. Like deep water moving far below the surface, your awareness is free to drift without direction, free to soften without explanation, free to fade into rest, knowing that nothing essential is being lost. The world will continue its quiet work without your supervision. The ocean will continue to circulate heat and memory. The planet will continue to breathe through water and air. Life will continue to adapt, respond, and persist, and you are allowed to let go of holding it all together. There is a deep kindness in systems that do not depend on constant attention, a reassurance in knowing that balance is not fragile, that it does not collapse the moment focus shifts elsewhere. The invisible rivers are proof of this. They carry stability across centuries without ever asking to be watched. They do not care if the surface is calm or chaotic. They do not hurry when conditions change. They do not cling to how things used to be. They adjust slowly, patiently, allowing the new shape of the world to emerge in its own time. This is not weakness, it is wisdom. And it is the same wisdom your body follows as sleep approaches. Breathing becomes quieter, not because it is controlled, but because it is allowed. Muscles release not because they are commanded, but because the need to hold dissolves. Thoughts loosen their edges and drift, not because they are resolved, but because they no longer need to stay sharp. Nothing needs to be finished. Nothing needs to be achieved. Rest is not a reward for effort. It is a natural state that returns when resistance fades. The ocean understands this deeply. After centuries in darkness, deep water will eventually rise again, carrying with it everything it gathered along the way. And when it does not announce its return. It simply becomes part of the surface world once more, nourishing life quietly, invisibly, completely. In the same way, rest does not erase what came before. It integrates it. The day settles into the night. Experience settles into memory. Tension settles into release. There is no separation between movement and rest here, only a change in depth. As awareness continues to soften, you may feel as though you are sinking gently, not downward in space, but inward into stillness, where effort is no longer required and attention is no longer sharp. This is not falling, it is settling, and settling is safe. The invisible rivers have been settling for millions of years, finding paths that support life rather than disrupt it, choosing continuity over speed, choosing balance over control. They remind us that the world does not depend on constant striving to remain whole, it depends on rhythm. And rhythm does not need supervision. Now there is nothing left to listen for. The ocean continues whether you hear it or not. The currents continue whether you follow them or not. The balance continues whether you think about it or not. You are free to drift, free to rest, free to disappear into the same gentle process that carries the planet itself. The current is steady, the depth is patient, and you are already held. Nothing more is required.